The sirens split the night like a blade. Blue and red strobes bounced off the polished hood of the black Mercedes parked outside the downtown hotel. Inside, Marcus Hill sat frozen behind the wheel, cufflinks still gleaming, phone still recording the stock alert that had just made him another $5 million. Step out of the vehicle. The officer's voice wasn't loud, it was cold, deliberate, the kind of tone trained to sound lawful while dripping with suspicion. Marcus raised his hands slowly, every movement exaggerated for the dashcam. He'd learned the choreography years ago. "Sir, what's this about?" "Stolen vehicle report," the cop said. The word stolen landed like a slap. Marcus laughed once, quiet, bitter. "It's registered under my name." The second officer yanked the door open anyway. His wrist twisted Marcus's arm with mechanical precision. The expensive watch hit the pavement. Someone passing by took out a phone. The hotel valet froze mid-step. The air was thick with disbelief, but no one intervened as the cuffs clicked. Marcus caught his own reflection in the police car window. Perfect suit, pressed collar, wrists locked. Somewhere behind the glass, a rookie cop muttered, "Should have known he'd have a nice ride. They always steal the best ones." That line stayed in his ears as the door slammed shut, and as the city lights blurred past. Marcus's mind wasn't on fear. It was on names. He'd built empires off them, companies, contracts, ownerships. But tonight, those same names would burn through every precinct in the city. When the database finally revealed who he was, it would already be too late. The city was quiet enough to hear his watch tick. Marcus Hill adjusted the cuffs of his charcoal suit and stepped out of the hotel into the cold air, briefcase in hand. The valet nodded respectfully. He was a familiar face here. The black Mercedes purred as he started it. A deal had closed hours ago, and his mind was already on a flight to Zurich. Then the sirens wailed. He checked the mirror. 2 cruisers boxed him in, lights flashing. Marcus rolled down the window, pulse steady. "Evening, officers." The first cop approached with a flashlight, sweeping the beam across Marcus's face, as if searching for guilt. "Licensed and registration." "Sure." Marcus handed over the documents. "May I ask the reason?" "Vehicle reported stolen," the officer said. His partner circled the car, hand grazing his holster. "That's impossible. This car." "Step out of the vehicle." Marcus exhaled slowly. "Officer, I'm the owner now." He stepped out, palms open. The night smelled of oil and winter rain. Every movement drew eyes from the hotel entrance staff, tourists, phones discreetly raised. The younger officer grabbed his wrist, twisting it sharply. Pain shot up his arm. "Careful," Marcus said through clenched teeth. "You're making a mistake." "No mistake," the older cop said. "You match the description." Marcus looked at him, incredulous. "What description?" "Black male, mid-30s, dark suit, luxury vehicle. That's all we need." He almost laughed, but it caught in his throat. The metallic snap of cuffs ended the argument. "Sir, you're under arrest for possession of a stolen vehicle." The valet's voice trembled. "Officers, I saw him get the keys." "Step back, sir," a bystander whispered. "Ain't that the guy from TV? The tech one?" The officers didn't listen. Marcus's briefcase hit the pavement. Papers fanned out, contracts worth millions fluttering into the gutter. The rookie hesitated, glancing down. "You sure this is him, sir?" The senior cop didn't answer. He pushed Marcus toward the cruiser. "Get the door." Marcus's reflection in the glass stared back at him, calm on the outside, a storm within. He'd worked his whole life to escape that look, the look of being presumed. He felt the door slam behind him, inside the cruiser. The air reeked of vinyl and stale coffee. His phone buzzed from the seat beside the officer. He saw Jasmine's name flash. "Missed call 3. Can I quiet?" The officer said. Outside a crowd had gathered. Phones recorded. The hotel's name glowed above in gold letters. The Hamilton Grand. As the car pulled away, Marcus looked once more through the window, at the people watching, some curious, some afraid to care. The rookie murmured under his breath, "He's got a Rolex, sir." "Yeah," the senior cop said, voice dripping disdain. "They always do." Marcus shut his eyes. Every nerve in his body screamed to speak, to fight, to explain. But explanation was luxuried on in the city that praised his philanthropy. His skin had become evidence. The cruiser turned left toward the precinct. Streetlights flashed rhythmically across his face. Gold, black, gold, black, black, like a pulse, counting down to something inevitable. He thought of one thing as they drove into the dark. When they find out who I am, will it even matter? The fluorescent lights inside the precinct buzzed like insects. The air was dry, sterile, the kind of cold that stripped warmth from skin and dignity alike. Marcus sat on a hard metal chair, wrists cuffed to a steel ring bolted to the table. His suit jacket had been taken, his tie pulled loose by an impatient officer. Across from him, a clipboard slapped onto the desk. Full name, the sergeant said. Marcus Hill. Middle name, Anthony. The sergeant scribbled without looking up. Occupation, CEO. That made the man pause. He looked up, lips twisting faintly. Of what, exactly? Hill Tech Indices. A smirk. That one of those LLCs you people set up. Marcus said nothing. He'd learned silence was both shield and weapon. The younger officer, the rookie, lingered near the door. His eyes flicked between Marcus and the sergeant, uneasy. Sir, I think we should double-check the not your job, the sergeant snapped. Go, log the evidence. The rookie hesitated, then left. The sergeant leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Here's the thing, Mr. Hill. Car comes up flagged. You fit the description. You get brought in. Standard procedure. Marcus met his gaze. Procedure doesn't include breaking wrists. The sergeant's smile didn't reach his eyes. You resisting. Marcus inhaled through his nose. I asked for my lawyer 30 minutes ago. And you'll get one, the sergeant said, tapping the clipboard. After we finish processing. Behind the one-way glass, shadows moved, other officers watching. They always watched. The ritual humiliation was as rehearsed as any courtroom oath. Fingerprints, photos, each flash of the camera felt like theft, not of freedom, but of image. He'd been photographed thousands of times before. Magazine covers, Forbes interviews, charity galas, but under this fluorescent glare, the same face became mugshot material. Context was everything. When they finished, he was led into a holding area. The bench was cold metal. The man beside him, older, weary, looked up from under a hood. What they got you for? Existing, Marcus said quietly. The man chuckled bitterly. Then you fit right in. Minutes bled into hours. The hum of fluorescent light became a low ache in Marcus's skull. He stared at the scuffed tile, counting breaths. From the hallway, voices drifted in, low, mocking tones. Dude says he's a CEO. Yeah, and I'm the damn president. Laughter. The door opened. The rookie stepped in with a tablet. He looked nervous, holding it like contraband. Sir, I just ran the VIN. The car's registered to the sergeant. Cut him off. We'll handle it later. But it's under his name, the rookie said. The sergeant's jaw clenched. You questioning me now? The rookie froze. No, sir. Then get out. Marcus watched the exchange carefully. The cracks were showing. The silence afterward was heavier than any chain. He leaned back against the wall, breathing slow. You know, he said evenly, every minute you delay, this is a liability. Not for me, for you. The sergeant scoffed. Big words for a guy in cuffs. Marcus tilted his head, eyes sharp. You'll understand soon enough. The sergeant leaned closer, his voice dropping. You people always think you're untouchable. Money doesn't buy your way out of everything. Marcus's tone was calm, measured. No, but it buys better lawyers than you've ever met. The sergeant stood abruptly. Watch him, he ordered another officer. Slamming the door on his way out, the rookie lingered outside the glass, meeting Marcus's eyes for a moment. Guilt flickered there, brief, human, dangerous, dot inside the cell. Time dissolved. Marcus's hands tingled from the cuffs. His heart, though steady, carried a different kind of pulse now. Calculation. He wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger was premature. He was documenting, in memory, in tone, in every humiliating glance, because eventually there would be an audience. When the door finally opened again, a voice said, You've got one phone call. Marcus stood, straightened his shirt cuffs, as much as the restraints allowed. Good, he said. Let's make it count. He followed the officer down the hallway, steps echoing, fluorescent lights flickering overhead. Outside, the world still didn't know what had happened. Inside, Marcus was preparing the exact words that would make it unforgettable. The phone receiver was sticky from use. Marcus held it between cuffed wrists, the coiled cord stretching toward the officer stationed by the wall. Make it quick, the man said, eyes half-lidded with boredom. Marcus dialed from memory, Jasmine's direct line. She answered before the second ring. Marcus, where the hell have you? I'm at the 9th precinct. He interrupted. His tone was even, clipped. Arrested. They say the car was stolen. Silence, then, disbelief sharpened her voice. What? You own that car? I'm aware. Did you tell them who you are? He exhaled slowly. They didn't care. Static filled the line for a moment, the kind that wasn't from bad reception, but shock. I'm calling Lawson, Jasmine said, right now. Lawson, his corporate attorney, precise, ruthless, the kind of man who made entire boards sweat. Marcus's eyes flicked toward the officer by the wall. The man was pretending not to listen, but his shoulders stiffened. Do that, Marcus said, and call the Zurich office. Tell them to hold all press inquiries for now. Marcus, Jasmine said quietly, are you okay? He hesitated. That question, that human softness, threatened to puncture the armor he'd built since the moment the cuffs clicked. I'm fine. He lied. Just do it fast. He hung up before she could reply. The officer stepped forward, motioning. You done, for now, Marcus said. The man unlocked the cuffs from the phone rail, but left them on his wrist. Sit tight. We'll see what your story checks out as. Marcus smirked faintly. You'll see more than that. The officer frowned but said nothing, leading him back toward the holding area. Across the city, Jasmine burst into action. Her desk became a command post, 3 phones ringing, screens flashing with contacts. She spoke into one headset while typing on another keyboard. Yes, I need to confirm the detainment of Marcus Ahill. Yes, CEO of Hilltech Industries. He was taken by officers from the 9th Precinct. Ma'am, the receptionist stammered. I don't. Then find someone who does, Jasmine snapped. Now. Within minutes, she'd looped in Lawson's office, corporate security, and Marcus's personal driver. Every call led to another wall of we're checking. Every question met with bureaucratic fog. The first news alert hit her screen 15 minutes later. Breaking, unknown suspect detained outside Hamilton Grand Hotel in stolen luxury vehicle. The photo was grainy, but unmistakable. Marcus's profile, dignified even in handcuffs, had already been captured by a tourist's phone. Her stomach turned. She called Lawson again. You've seen it. Just now, Lawson said. His tone was cool, but clipped. I'm on my way to the precinct. Send me everything. Vehicle registration, insurance, corporate ID. I'll bury them in paperwork before they even know who they cuffed. Already on it, Jasmine said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The office around her was silent now. Staff staring at the photo on the news screen. One whispered, Is that really him? Jasmine shot them a look that silenced the room. Nobody says a word outside this building. Back at the precinct, Marcus sat in the corner of the holding cell. The older detainee beside him leaned over. Someone's coming for you. Yes. The sergeant's brow furrowed. Reed, from which firm? Crane and Porter. The color drained slightly from the sergeant's face. That name carried weight. Lawsuits that cost departments millions, he muttered. Get me the report, now. Marcus heard every word through the open cell door. His lips curved slightly, not in triumph, but in vindication. The system was stirring. Power recognized power, just late enough to reveal its hypocrisy. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. Outside, headlines were already rewriting his story. Inside, Marcus leaned back on the cold bench, closing his eyes briefly, not to rest, but to prepare. Tomorrow, the city would wake to his name, and this time, they'd remember who they tried to erase. Morning light crept through the precinct's narrow windows, pale, sterile, and indifferent. Marcus hadn't slept. He sat upright on the bench, cuffs gone but dignity still bruised. Around him, the station hummed with nervous energy. Phones rang more often now. Conversations cut short when he looked up. The shift had changed, but the unease stayed. Outside, the world had caught fire. On the TV mounted above the booking counter, a news anchor spoke over a looped image, Marcus being led to the cruiser. The caption read, Man wrongfully arrested turns out to be tech billionaire Marcus Hill. Inside the precinct, the volume had been muted, but every officer could feel the sound. The sergeant who'd processed Marcus the night before stood near his desk, face pale under the harsh light. Who the hell leaked this? He barked. No one answered. The rookie Bennett typed quietly at his terminal, pretending not to hear. Lawson Reed arrived 15 minutes later, tailored suit sharp enough to slice through the room's tension. He walked straight past the front desk. Marcus Hill, he said to the clerk. Now, sir, we're still now, Lawson repeated, flashing credentials. The tone wasn't raised, but it made obedience instinctive. Marcus was escorted into an interview room, this time without cuffs. When the door opened, he stood. Lawson, Marcus. The lawyer's voice softened just enough to carry recognition. not pity. You all right? Marcus straightened his collar. Physically, Lawson's jaw clenched. Good, because the city isn't. He dropped a folder onto the table. Inside, headlines, screenshots, emails. Every outlet had the story. CNN, Reuters, TechWatch, even the local blogs. Marcus skimmed a headline aloud. Billionaire CEO detained in mistaken identity incident. Racial profiling alleged. His lips tightened. Alleged? They always use that word, Lawson said. Keeps the advertisers calm. The door opened again. The precinct captain entered. A man in his 50s, suit too small, sweat already gathering at his temple. Mr. Hill, he began, voice brittle with forced professionalism. Let me first extend our don't, Marcus said. The captain froze. Don't extend anything, Marcus continued, voice low but deliberate. You can't apologize for a system doing exactly what it was built to do. Lawson didn't interrupt. The silence that followed was sharper than shouting. The captain shifted. We're reviewing procedure. The officers involved will be protected. Marcus cut in. I know. Bennett appeared in the doorway, pale and uncertain. He looked at Marcus, then at his superior. Sir, I think you should see this. He handed the captain a tablet. On screen, a news live stream played. The footage, bodycam leaked, uncut. The video showed everything. The flashlight in Marcus's face, the wrist twist, the mocking laughter, the line, they always steal the best ones. The captain's face drained of color. Where did this come from? Doesn't matter, Lawson said. It's everywhere now. Marcus's voice was calm, detached. People finally get to see what respect looks like when filtered through suspicion. Across town, Jasmine was coordinating media responses. Her phone vibrated nonstop. She spoke into one line while reading another screen. No statements, she said firmly. Not yet. Let the footage speak first. Every outlet is running it. Even state networks, especially them. She hung up, exhaling. Around her, the Hilltech PR team worked in near silence, professionals who knew this wasn't just a scandal, it was a reckoning. Her assistant hesitated near the door. Ma'am, Mr. Hill's personal accounts, should we lock them down? Jasmine looked up from her screen. No, leave them open. Patrols, he's not hiding. Back in the precinct, Marcus stood near the observation window, watching the chaos ripple through the department. Reporters were already gathering outside. Cameras waited like predators. The captain rubbed his temples. We'll issue a statement. Don't bother, Lawson said. You'll only make it worse. Marcus turned. No, let them talk. Every word will sound like damage control. People will hear the fear behind it. He started for the door. The captain raised a hand weakly. You're free to go, Mr. Hill. The misunderstanding has been cleared. Marcus stopped just long enough to meet his eyes. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a mirror. The room went still. Lawson followed him out, nodding briefly to the dumbstruck officers. The two men stepped into the corridor, a long, sterile hall, now echoing with whispers. At the exit, Bennett stood by the door. He spoke softly as Marcus passed. Sir, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Marcus looked at him, gaze steady. Then don't stay sorry, Officer Bennett. Stay aware. Bennett nodded, shame tightening his jaw. Outside, the flash of cameras hit like strobe lights. Questions exploded at once. Mr. Hill, were you profiled? Do you plan to sue? Do you forgive the department? Marcus didn't respond. His silence, his composure, became the only answer they needed. Lawson guided him toward the waiting car. As the doors shut, the noise faded through the tinted window. Marcus watched the precinct shrinking behind them. The same building where men had laughed hours ago, now drowning in shame. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Vindication wasn't satisfaction. It was exposure, raw, unfiltered, irreversible. Lawson checked his phone. The footage is viral. 20 million views already. Marcus looked out the window, voice quiet. Good. Let them see what justice costs before it even starts. The city outside blurred past sirens, glass towers, morning traffic. For once, it wasn't just another business day. It was the day the mask cracked. And Marcus Hill, the man they called a thief, was about to own every name in the report. The precinct conference room had never been this quiet. A dozen officers sat stiffly, the hum of the old ceiling fan doing little to cut the tension. The captain stood at the front, face hard, eyes hollow, on the projector screen. Marcus Hill's corporate biography glowed in cold white text. Marcus A. Hill, founder and CEO, Hilltech Industries, net worth $3.8 billion, recipient of the National Innovation Medal, major donor to federal technology initiatives. Everyone deepened the silence. Shut it off, the captain muttered. No one moved. He turned sharply. I said, shut it off. Bennett fumbled for the remote, killing the projection. The room fell into a dim gray stillness. Finally, the sergeant from the night before, the one who had cuffed Marcus, spoke. His voice cracked slightly. Sir, we couldn't have known. That's the point, the captain said. You didn't care to know. The sergeant stiffened. We were following standard procedure. Bennett looked down at his hands. Standard's the problem, he said quietly. The sergeant turned on him. Watch your tone, rookie. No, Bennett said, his voice steadying. I watched a man get treated like a criminal because we assumed he fit the pattern. Then I watched that same man walk out and dismantle the department's reputation overnight. The captain rubbed his forehead. Enough. Legal's already here. The mayor's office called. Federal oversight might be coming in. Someone cursed under their breath. Outside the conference room, news vans lined the street. The precinct, once anonymous, had become a national symbol overnight. Cameras flashed at every officer who entered or left. The story was no longer local. It was a movement. Marcus sat in Lawson's downtown office, sunlight glinting off the polished glass walls. The contrast between this serenity and the cell from last night made his chest tighten. Federal agencies have reached out, Lawson said. Civil Rights Division, Deutsch, they're all reviewing the footage. Marcus leaned back, arms crossed. They'll review until the public moves on. Not this time, Lawson replied. This went global. The footage is already being translated in multiple languages. You're trending on every platform. Marcus's face stayed unreadable. Trending doesn't fix systems. Lawson studied him. No. But it breaks silence. Jasmine entered the office with a tablet. You need to see this. She placed it on the desk. A live broadcast played the precinct's press conference. The captain stood before microphones, flanked by officers in uniform. His voice wavered just slightly as he read from the prepared statement. We regret the incident involving Mr. Marcus Hill. The department is conducting an internal review. This does not reflect the values of our city's law enforcement. Marcus chuckled softly. Internal review, the eternal loophole. Lawson smirked faintly. He looks like a man praying for early retirement. Then the reporter's questions cut through the scripted. Captain, will the officers be charged? Was racial profiling involved? Has Mr. Hill contacted your department for comment? The captain stammered through deflections, sweat beading along his temple. Marcus turned the tablet off. They'll offer a settlement next. Lawson nodded. Probably, but the question is, do you want one? Marcus stared out the glass wall, down at the city that had both built and betrayed him. Money fixes nothing. It only proves they think justice has a price. Jasmine spoke softly. Then what do we do? He looked at her reflection in the glass. We let them unravel themselves. Every statement they make digs deeper. Back at the precinct, panic was spreading. Reporters were digging into records, past complaints, user force reports, misconduct settlements. A senior officer whispered, "We've got history on file. They'll find everything." They already have, Bennett said from his desk. He wasn't smiling. They're asking why body cams kept malfunctioning the past 3 months. The captain slammed his fist onto the table. Enough. We control the narrative. We do not. He stopped as his phone buzzed. The caller ID read, Mayor's office. He stepped outside to take it, but everyone could still hear the muffled shouting through the door. When he returned, his face had gone gray. The mayor's demanding suspensions, effective immediately. The sergeant stood abruptly. Sir, that's not fair. Neither was last night, Bennett said coldly. The captain pointed to the door. Hand in your badge. Sergeant, you're done. The sergeant hesitated, jaw tightening. For the first time, fear replaced arrogance. He pulled the badge from his chest and dropped it onto the table with a metallic clang that echoed through the room. No one said a word. That evening, Marcus's face filled every television screen in America. News anchors debated whether his calm demeanor was grace or strategic restraint. Activists called it the moment the mask slipped off the system. At Hilltech headquarters, the building's digital facade displayed one phrase: equality isn't a courtesy. Jasmine stood beside him in the quiet of his office as camera flashes lit the skyline below. You could hold a press conference, she said softly. Speak your truth before they twist it. Marcus shook his head. They've heard enough voices. What they need now is silence that unsettles them. He walked to the window, watching the city pulse with light, the same city that had once pulled him from his car in the dark. Behind him, The TV replayed his arrest. The cuffs, the glare, the anchor's voice filled the room. When the database revealed who Marcus Hill was, the narrative flipped overnight. But the question remains, why did it take wealth for the world to care? Marcus didn't turn around, he just whispered, almost to himself, "That's the story that should have started this, not ended it." And outside, under the glowing skyline, the city finally began to feel the weight of its own reflection. The morning came with a different kind of silence, not the peace of dawn, but the quiet that follows exposure. Every screen in the country carried fragments of the same story: the arrest, the reversal, the humiliation of the system that had once felt untouchable. The precinct was sealed for internal review. 2 officers were already suspended. Investigators from Washington had arrived before noon. For once, there were no reporters camped outside Marcus's home. The noise had shifted elsewhere, to the institutions that had enabled the event. Marcus sat alone in his office at Hilltech, overlooking the city from the 70th floor. His phone buzzed constantly: interview requests, public statements, board inquiries, but he ignored them all. He wasn't thinking about image. He was thinking about architecture. The architecture of power. The invisible design that allowed the weak to be humiliated while the privileged were insulated. The same system that had almost swallowed him. Jasmine entered quietly, setting a folder on his desk. "Federal Oversight Committee wants to meet. DOJ too. They're asking if you'll testify." Marcus didn't look up. "They want a soundbite, not a solution." Lawson walked in right after her, phone in hand. "Except this time, they don't get to control it. You do." Marcus finally looked up. "How?" Lawson handed him the phone. "By speaking directly, not as the victim, not as the CEO, but as the man who built what they can't silence." Marcus watched the screen. It was the invitation to a televised congressional hearing on systemic bias in law enforcement. His name was listed among the witnesses. He placed the phone down. "I'll go." The Capitol hearing room was marble, cold, and clinical. Cameras lined the back wall. Every seat was filled. Marcus entered in a dark suit. No jewelry, no entourage, no theatrics, just presence. When he sat before the microphone, the room stilled. The chairwoman cleared her throat. "Mr. Hill, we understand you've been through a traumatic experience. We'd like you to describe, in your own words, what happened." Marcus didn't blink. "You already saw it. What I'd rather discuss is what didn't happen." A ripple of surprise passed through the room. He continued, voice calm but surgical. "What didn't happen was curiosity. No one asked who I was. No one checked what I was doing. No one questioned the assumption that I was a threat. That isn't law enforcement. That's instinct weaponized." The chairwoman shifted slightly. "You're saying the problem is cultural." Marcus leaned forward. "It's architectural. You built a structure that rewards fear and punishes restraint. Then you wonder why it collapses under scrutiny." Another congressman interjected. "Mr. Hill, with respect, emotions ran high that night. Officers are trained to respond under pressure." Marcus cut him off. "They weren't under pressure. I was silenced." Cameras clicked. He continued, slower now. "When I was on the ground, one of them laughed. That moment told me everything. Not about him, about the system that made him think that laughter was safe." He looked across the room, meeting the eyes of every official who'd flinched at his words. "The question isn't what they did to me," he said. "It's what you let them do to everyone else." The clip went viral within hours. For once, the internet didn't drown it in noise. It echoed it line for line, frame by frame. "They weren't under pressure. I was. The question isn't what they did to me, it's what you let them do to everyone else." Those sentences became banners, tweets, street art, classroom discussions. The narrative had inverted, no longer about one man's mistreatment, but about the framework that made it inevitable. The police commissioner's office smelled faintly of bleach and paperwork, the kind of sterile cleanliness that couldn't scrub out rot. Commissioner Doyle sat behind his desk, jaw locked tight, while reporters waited outside the glass door like vultures. Every major network had requested a comment since Marcus's testimony. None had been granted. Now the city council was demanding resignations. Federal investigators were conducting interviews. The department's union had gone silent. He adjusted his tie with trembling fingers. "How the hell did this happen?" he muttered. His deputy didn't answer. The question wasn't about events. It was about exposure. Across the city, Lawson and Jasmine sat with Marcus in a conference room overlooking the skyline. The same skyline that had once symbolized his success now felt like a witness, tall, unmoving, impassive. Bennett's statement leaked. Lawson said, Scrolling through his tablet, he admitted to excessive force and falsifying a portion of the arrest report. Marcus said nothing. Jasmine's eyes widened. He turned on them. Lawson nodded. Seems like guilt finally outweighed fear. He's cooperating with the feds. Marcus's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of exhaustion. One confession doesn't cleanse a system. Lawson leaned forward. No, but it opens the door. They're talking reform packages, civilian oversight, even restitution hearings. Restitution, Marcus repeated, almost to himself. As if you can repay a night like that with a check. Later that day, news alerts exploded across every screen in the city. Breaking, police commissioner resigns amid scandal following CEO Marcus Hill's testimony. Officer Bennett cooperates with federal inquiry. Claims racist culture encouraged unjust arrests. The video clips ran non-stop. The resignation statement, the press conference, the sound of flashbulbs firing like distant gunshots. For the first time, the story wasn't about Marcus. It was about the structure, the blueprint, the architecture he'd described under oath. The media called it the Hill effect. By evening, Marcus sat on the steps outside the Lincoln Memorial, alone except for the low hum of distant traffic. He had left his phone in the car, his jacket folded neatly beside him. Tourists passed occasionally. Some recognized him, most didn't. A few stopped to whisper his name, but he didn't look up. He was thinking about his father, the man who'd once told him, "You'll have to build a kingdom they can't enter to see you as their equal." He had done it, and still they had dragged him through the street. Jasmine arrived quietly and sat beside him. "You've changed everything," she said. Marcus shook his head. "I changed the camera angle. The story was already there. People are finally listening. They're listening because they saw me in a suit on the floor. They heard the sound of power breaking character. That's not progress. That's theater." She turned toward him, voice low. "Maybe, but sometimes theater is what makes truth visible." He smiled faintly. "Then let's make sure it's the kind they can't forget." 2 weeks later, Bennett was called to testify publicly. Cameras flashed again, but this time the subject wasn't a billionaire or a courtroom. It was a man in uniform, admitting the system's rot from within. He spoke haltingly, voice cracking. "We were told to look twice at certain people, to assume danger before doubt. We didn't question it because questioning meant isolation." He paused, eyes flickering toward Marcus, who sat in the back row, expression unreadable. "I didn't see a man that night," Bennett said finally. "I saw what I was trained to fear, and that's what destroyed me." No one clapped, no one spoke. The silence that followed was heavier than judgment. Later, outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Marcus again. "Mr. Hill, do you forgive him?" one asked. Marcus stopped, turned slowly, and faced the cameras. His voice was quiet but unflinching. "Forgiveness isn't a headline," he said. "It's a process, and it starts when the guilty stop asking for it." He stepped into his car and shut the door. Inside, the world went silent again. No noise, no flashbulbs, no applause, just breathing. That night, on national television, a special aired, "The Arrest That Changed America." Clips of Marcus's testimony, the arrest footage, and the commissioner's resignation played in sequence. But at the end, the anchor's voice carried a sobering note. "Justice has a price, and it's never paid in full." The camera faded to black. Marcus watched it from his apartment. Standing by the window, Lawson texted him. "History will remember this." He replied simply, "History forgets fast." Still, as he looked out over the city, something in him felt lighter, not peace, but clarity. For the first time, the weight wasn't his to carry alone. Across town, a mural had appeared overnight, a massive painting of a man's silhouette standing tall amid blue lights and city shadows. Beneath it, the words, "He stood so we could see." People gathered to take photos, to lay flowers, to whisper stories of their own. Marcus never visited it. He didn't need to. The point wasn't the image, it was the echo. Weeks later, as he prepared for another board meeting, Jasmine stopped him in the hallway. "You think it's over?" she asked. Marcus adjusted his cufflinks. "No, but for once, they're the ones explaining themselves." He glanced at the city skyline one last time, the towers reflecting the late sunlight, like fragments of a cracked mirror, and walked into the meeting, not as a symbol, not as a victim, but as a man who had forced the system to look back at itself and see what it had built. And this time, it blinked first. Meanwhile, the officers involved had become ghosts of the system they once embodied. Bennett sat at a cafe across town, watching the news play on the mounted TV. He had turned in his badge 2 days earlier. The anchor was reporting on nationwide protests, sparked by Marcus's testimony. The screen showed people holding signs that read "Assumption is violence, and systems have memory." Bennett turned to the barista. "Feels different this time." The barista shrugged. "Feels real this time." He nodded slowly, unsure whether to feel guilt or relief. Later that night, Marcus returned home to find a small envelope at his door. No name, no address, just a folded note inside. "I was there that night. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve it. None of them do." Marcus folded it back carefully and set it on the counter. He didn't need revenge. The system was dismantling itself without him lifting another hand. He stepped out onto his balcony, overlooking the skyline. The city looked quieter now, not because it was healed, but because it was finally listening. Jasmine joined him after a few moments. "You did it," she said quietly. Marcus didn't answer. "Doesn't it feel freeing?" He looked at her, expression unreadable. "Freedom isn't something they give, it's something you take and then refuse to return." He turned back to the city, the lights flickering below, like neurons firing in a brain, forced to confront its own reflection. The world had watched him fall, then rise, but what lingered wasn't his victory, it was their reckoning. At midnight, the Hilltech website went dark for 10 seconds, then lit up again with a single page. Black background, white text. "Systems fail when people obey them blindly." Marcus Hill,